there's so many things that I've done to keep myself from hurting myself, or I don't know, or to heal. And one of the things she really says that resonates with me is, you don't have to heal. Like, there's nothing to heal. Like, I'm fine. Like, I just have to accept that. And that's what that kayak ride was yesterday.
Well, welcome back to the Grave Matters podcast, Mitch Webb, my brain brother and warrior. That was beautiful, man. You're gonna make me cry. Um, that's there's a lot in there, but I think the thing that stands out the most is the fuel to the intentions we have in our lives and being aware of it. So what were you saying?
There's a lake right by the house, and I've been driving by it for a year and a half. And I love to kayak and stand up paddle. We've done that before.
Yeah.
And
Oh, is that where your story post on Instagram was from this morning with the sunset or the sunrise?
Yeah.
It looks sick.
I'm reading this book that I'm sure you would like. It reminds me a lot of your story as well. It's called Dying to Be Me. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not.
It's about a near-death experience, and this girl is like, I got it because Elle Russ made a suggestion for it, and it was, dude, it's like one of those serendipitous things. I feel like after reading the book, I feel like my soul like guided me to it, right? So I hadn't listened to Primal Blueprint in a while, and just popped in, and wasn't even taking a whole bunch from the actual interview, but she recommended this book, and like she was like real adamant about it. Elle was, and Elle and I, we all kind of have the same perspective around like Dr. Joe and mindset and all this. And I'm like, I got to check this out. And dude, and it's funny. As soon as I had the thought, I was telling Katie this last night, because this has been like a profound shift for me here recently. As soon as I had the thought of maybe I need to check out this book, I got this like chills all over my body. And I'm like, whoa. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll check that out. That's always my sign that, this is something for me. And I was like, maybe I should read this. Should I read this book now or read something else? And it was like, this book, you're reading this book right now. And so it was all about fear. And that's something like I've had for so long, man. And basically she has this near-death experience. She has some friends around her who have cancer. She gets really afraid of cancer. She starts researching it like crazy. Learns that, there's carcinogens and everything, and starts avoiding everything, and stops living her life, and is afraid to live, is afraid to die. And then she gets cancer, and she's afraid of the treatment. And so she goes alternatives. She does everything, very much like myself. And gets to the point where her body shuts down, her organs start shutting down, her muscles wasting away. She can't eat food, and she just surrenders. And she goes into this realm where she's dying. She's above her body. She can kind of see everybody in the room, in the I guess ICU, let's say, or the hospital, and she can hear the conversations. She's trying to tell them like, hey, I feel so much better here. She feels connected to everyone and everything. She feels at peace. She realized that the fear is what, how when we go through some of this mindset stuff, people will say, you're responsible for this, or she said, I'm not responsible for this. The cancer is not me. She was saying that the fear that I created around it created this cancer. And I'm like, boom. And, dude, someone, and both of us have been through some shit. And 10, 15 years ago, I hit my head really hard and started having, what got labeled as anxiety. And for the rest of my life since then, I've been trying to fix myself, and like assuming that something is wrong with me, right? And one of the things she says is like, and doing everything that I can, right? And ultimately falling in love with health and wellness, and helping others, because so many things have helped me. And one of the things she says is like, doing is for the brain, being is for the soul. And I have not just be is kind of the message. And I haven't done that in a long time, dude. And I love my life, but I still suffer, man. And it's because of me trying to force an outcome. And this is kind of what we want to talk about today, is having this weight and putting pressure on the outcome. And I know that every time I get that message from the universe and I let go and I just surrender, shit happens really fast. And she talks about this in the book, where when we're working in the physical world and we're doing all the things, it's like working in molasses. It's slow. but when we're working on an energetic, a mental, emotional level, and getting rid of that and being aware of the fear, and tapping into your spirit and your intuition and saying like, do I want to do this? Am I having fun? I realize like maybe I'm not having fun with this stuff. I'm tired. I'm sick of like trying to push my body and try to force this outcome and getting some results, but not getting where I want to go. And I've just decided like I'm really gonna surrender this time, and I'm really gonna tap into trying to just be. And yesterday I just hopped in the kayak and said fuck it and went and got in the kayak. And dude, I haven't been able to exercise. You know what I mean? Like I've been afraid of exercise. I've taught my body to be afraid of it. Like I've been doing some yoga, and I did yoga the other day, and it wiped me out. I did it for 20 minutes and it wiped me out. And I was just so pissed. And it's because the whole time I was doing it, I was trying to be something I wasn't. I was trying to do it perfect, do it without hurting myself, or I was afraid. And so yesterday I went hiking all yesterday morning. The day before I hiked 7 miles with Katie. That got up the next morning, hiked again all morning, had some calls. Instead of like doing what I was going to do, I just grabbed my kayak and went and jumped in the water and paddled. I'm sore as shit. I slept with Katie for the first time in a long time. There's so many things that I've done to like, to keep myself from hurting myself, or I don't know, or to heal. And one of the things she really says that resonates with me is, you don't have to heal. Like there's nothing to heal. Like I'm fine. Like I just have to accept that. And that's what that kayak ride was yesterday.
Well, welcome back to the Great Matters podcast, Mitch Webb, my brain brother and warrior. That was beautiful, man. You're gonna make me cry. There's a lot in there, but I think the thing that stands out the most is the fuel to the intentions we have in our lives and being aware of it, which we have very similar virtual mentors. Maybe one day we'll meet them, who knows, that have helped us understand that. And that seems to be what you got from this book, and how you were doing something. I can resonate with that so much, being afraid of something happening and that fear fueling us to do all the things that are, scientifically proven to help you. But if the energy isn't, congruent with the intention, then we're just, in a sense, draining our energy and creating the things that we don't want. So I love that book has helped you, and that podcast. And, I think you and I share a lot of synergy and synchronicities in life, and meeting people at the right time, and this thing coming into our lives, and that. And we've talked about several of those things, and it seems like this was just meant to happen. I believe our friendship was meant to happen as well. So it's just really, really cool for you to share those experiences. And that's the message I try to share, or I don't try to share, that I do share. My intention is people understand and, witness it, this concept in their lives. But the more intentional we become on the life we want to live, and we surrender, as you said, we attach ourselves to letting go of needing to control and needing the outcome to happen to validate who we are, to become something that we want to become. The more we just be, and we be present, and we observe, we don't judge ourselves or other people, the more we can do that, which it's not about perfection, it's about consistency. Then the more we can enjoy our lives, and the more, the things that we don't want, it's just they disappear, because it's just a redirect of focus and reframing a lot of things to help redirect that focus. So I love that. And that brings us to what we're going to talk about today, with our intention of being in the coaching space and helping people navigate the path, so to speak, that we've already gone through, and we're continuing to learn. And that path just never ends. As long as you're a living human being, the work doesn't stop. But we can help people get from where they are, as in stuck with whatever aspect of their life, to liberation and freedom, which is what we're experiencing, which allows us to grow even more. So on that note, I want to talk about how business is going for you, being a health and mindset coach. Whatever. I know you and I have worked through our labels with that. Instead of putting ourselves in a box, we've come up for our own terms that we coin ourselves. So I'd love to just get an update on how things are going. And the number one thing we had on the list to speak about today was, this is my curiosity, is what is one, how is the business going? And then two, what's the number one reoccurrence or recurrence that you see with your clients? And meaning, what is the struggle that they're going through? And what is it that they're either not aware of, or they're stuck in the opposite of what they want? So I guess to better clarify that is, what's the number one thing you see that's reoccurring with your clients that is getting them into this feeling of feeling stuck?
Gosh. Well, first, let me start with how business is going, and then let me kind of shift into the number
Yes,
one.
please do.
I'm sure that'll come out as I think about that. Business is going great, man. Had like a little bit of a down slice. Again, it's attachment. Whenever I'm like trying to force new clients and getting frustrated with where are the clients, and then I surrender and just do my thing and put out, what's been helping me. They seem to come and find me, and they're always, it's like I manifest them. And so I've got a lot that just signed up and reloaded and had the biggest year I've had. I've been doing this for four years now, and I tripled my business this year. I went from making $20,000-$30,000 a year to looking at potentially making six figures this year, and that's amazing. I wasn't even aware of it.
Oh yeah, man, that's awesome. Congrats.
That's how non-attached I am to it. Yeah, I just love what I do and have fun with it, and enjoy really sharing what's helped me and helping someone else empower themselves. And Katie just happened to text me, and she's like, "Hey, you got these new commitments in." She's like, and she gave me kind of the how much has been committed and what we're on track to do for this year. And I was just, I was shocked. So it's been great, and it's, speaking of labels and shifting and changing, it's really went from, I help people lose weight and perform better or look better, reverse diagnoses, get off of medications, really tap into their truer, higher self, the same work that you and I are doing. These are typically people that are, early on in my journey. They're anywhere from 6 months behind me, a year behind me, to 10 years behind me. A lot of them, don't really, and I would say that it's shifted from, man, I don't think it's about, I love nutrition, I love lifestyle, I love all the things that come along with this, and we've had this conversation a bunch, but that's not what it's about. It's about, why are you not doing those things? Why are you not why are you not feeding your body what it needs? Why are you not moving your body? Why are you not sleeping good? Why are you overly stressing and focused on this thing or that thing, or achieving the next material possession, whatever that may be? Why are you fixated on these things? And I see a lot of my clients, they're kicking ass in everything else that they're doing, right? They're really strong in business and relationships and family. Maybe they've had big challenges they've overcome. Maybe that's like an addiction, or maybe they've already lost a lot of weight and pulled themselves out of some terrible situation or diagnosis that they've reversed, but they can't quite keep it together. They're kind of up and down, back and forth, and they keep sabotaging themselves. And there's usually some kind of limiting belief in there. And it's usually something around, I'm not good enough, or it's not safe to do X, or there's fear around that. And once we're able to identify that, to be aware of it, and start to, really awareness is the first step. We talk about that all the time, but once we're able to be aware of that and start to recognize that in the day-to-day, to do things different, to ultimately go from that thinking differently to doing things differently, to being someone different on every level, then the other stuff is easy, and once they get out of their own way, and now they're able to really focus on, with all their energy, without their energy being somewhere else, tied up in some bullshit, some trauma from the past. Now they can do whatever it is they need to do to reach their goal. And that's usually going to be weight loss, or feeling or looking a certain way with my clients. And a lot of that's, comes from the mental emotional work that we do. And then when they get out of their own way and they're not sabotaging themselves, that stuff's easy. That's what I'll tell everybody. Like, hey, this stuff is easy. It's not hard. And then ultimately they have I feel like they get the full package there. They're the businessman or woman, they're mom or dad, superhero, and now they feel that way too. They look that way. They feel that way, and they look in the mirror. And it's not always like a number on the scale, or looking a certain way, but it's whatever that means to them, whatever makes them feel empowered in the moment, and makes them more comfortable in their skin, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree. That's why I think you and I both have like transitioned from like being solely a health coach and focusing on just diet and supplements and exercise to the mental and emotional work we do today, to where it's more about like, what mindset do you have? Like, what beliefs do you have? And what beliefs are you building about your life subjectively and the reality that you live in? And how does that all fuel your choices in exercise or not, your choices in foods that are either helping or hurting you? It all adds up. And that actually goes into my number one theme or concept that I've seen come up again and again is there's a couple different ways that I can explain it. It's either people feeling like they're not good enough or they don't deserve to have X, Y, and Z, and or they're dictating or they're putting their reality or their identity onto what they do, and they're limiting themselves of what's possible because they see, you know, what they've done to this point and they can't see past it. So that summarizes everything into, I feel like the number one thing that the theme I keep seeing with people is being trapped in their circumstances, being defined by that. And that's my message. My personal story that I've turned into, you know, my mission of helping people is, you're much more than your circumstances. It's just a matter of having the support and the energy to get you out of that mindset to see beyond. And that's what we talk about, focusing on what you want rather than what you don't want. Because, you know, being fueled to leave a situation, and this is coming from my own experience, can only get you so far before you burn out. But being drawn towards something that's inspiring, that is bringing the emotion of higher energy, is going to last. And I did a post the other day about this on my Instagram about, like, some days I don't feel like getting out of bed. Some days I don't feel like speaking out. Like, some days I don't, because people think that it's a facade. Like, and I do my best to share, you know, the quote unquote good and the bad on all my social media platforms. But so many people still, they just see me as this person that's like, how do you always stay positive? Like, how do you do this? It's like, I'm not always positive because I'm a human being. The difference is what am I focusing on? And over time with conscious repetition, you can rewire and train your brain to automatically catch yourself when you're not feeling a certain way, you're not doing something that is productive in terms of, you know, what you want, or maybe it's after you caught yourself. So then you can instantly go, what do I want, or how do I want to show up next time, or how do I want to speak or behave, and then how do I do that? And that's where I've got myself today. It's automatic now. It's just like, even if I'm a post feeling whatever or saying whatever or doing whatever, it's like, oh, that was less than ideal. Okay, what can I do next time? What do I want next time? Or what do I want to feel right now? Let's focus on the vision. Let's be drawn towards that, which is a huge challenge, especially with people like myself that had control issues and needing to control outcomes, being so focused on outcomes, which is what I think you and I have experienced and talked a lot about, is detaching ourselves from needing that outcome to build the identity of who we are. Because we know we can be whatever we want as long as we believe in it and we take congruent action. We don't need an outcome to validate who we are. We don't need an outcome or anything external to validate our worth and self. But the more we disassociate from the outcome, we have our sights set on that target and we work towards it. We keep a congruent alignment in our behavior and our actions. But the more we can detach from needing that, the quicker it happens, which is something that I'm experiencing right now, and in a way that could have never been written. Like you and I meeting, it was like I couldn't have wrote out that story of us being so aligned on so many things. Of course, we see different things, different perspectives, and we have our differences and we talk about them. But that, I mean, we're human. You need that contrast with relationships. But I couldn't have wrote out a better story of how we met. And I think that that's part of our journey of surrendering to the process and to life itself, and thinking about how life happens for us, but we have to choose to see it. It led us together. And then on that journey together, we're able to support each other to progress even further, and then help other people do the same, which is what we've done in creating a business for ourselves, and why you and I are both have seen the success in our business, because we could go make money doing anything, but we'd rather make money helping people that's serving a higher purpose. And I learned that through my journey. You learned that through your journey. The micro may look different, but the macro, it's all about being off self and on purpose, as my good friend Isaac Stegman says that you'll meet one day. Who he recently was on the podcast talking about Cheerios coaching, as he calls it, which is phenomenal. But it's all about purpose. And you and I have been through some shit to find our higher purpose, which at first, your purpose, if you don't know what your higher purpose is, that's okay. You don't need to know. Your purpose should be becoming the best version of yourself, because that indirectly affects other people. And then pursuing what you love and what you're drawn towards, you'll find a higher purpose. Or maybe your purpose is just become the best version of yourself and pass it on to your kids. Who knows? But that's the thing about getting out of our own heads and thinking that there needs to be some kind of way. Because the more we do that, like you said earlier in the beginning of this, the more we think we have to do X, Y, and Z to heal ourselves, the more we're feeling the fact that we believe we're broken when we are just what we are. It's just a matter of aligning the core beliefs and the energy and the behavior to the outcome that we want, but detaching from that outcome, which I know is a really complex idea to wrap your mind around. It's taken us years to understand and to fully believe in, and now we're being in that space. But it's so worth it. And just a last note, there's a short book called 7 Laws of Spiritual Success by Deepak Chopra. And I believe it's the last chapter. At least it makes sense in my mind why you'd have it the last. It's titled The Law of Detachment.
All right.
And he talks about exactly what we're talking about in such an eloquent, simple way. But essentially it's saying, set your sights on the target, what you want, and then backtrack, which is what Atomic Habits by James Clear does so beautifully in describing this process. Set your target and then work your way back to where you are now. And then ask yourself, what's one thing I can do that's going to get me closer and closer and closer, and build upon that. Same thing if you're looking at a bow, like, I have little experience in this area, but if you're pulling back a bow and you get your target, what are all the other things you got to focus on and be aware of? It's no longer the target. You know where that is, but you have to be aware of so many different factors, especially as technology is advanced. So it's just about getting your sights set and then reverse engineering to where you are today and what changes you need to make along the way and then become what you want.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I want to go back to something you said. I love that post that you did the other day too. And because I can totally resonate with that sometimes. Sometimes I don't want to get out of bed. Sometimes I do just want to lay there and lay on the couch and feel sorry for myself. So, but you mentioned like catching yourself and doing something different. Like unpack that a little bit. Give us some tools for, maybe how you approach that and how someone listening could go about that themselves.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at the simplest form, it started out with me having a process and writing these things out, so I would journal quite a bit. And it'd be like, all right, so what did I do today that I wasn't proud of, or what was less than ideal today? And then I go, okay, what can I do differently next time this happens? And you go through that. And then over the years, as you do that, it just becomes automatic. And we know all learning is at the unconscious level. And to embed a new learning, you have to consciously repeat this. This is why athletes are such a great example, or artists, musicians, or, speakers or whatever. You consciously repeat over and over again, then you don't have to think about it. You just let your unconscious mind do the work. And so at first it may look formal. It may be a journaling exercise. It may be, working with a coach, whatever it is, to acknowledge what you don't like about how you're showing up, essentially. Become aware, be conscious of it. And then every time you catch yourself, even if it's after the fact, that's still okay because you caught yourself. Ask yourself, what could I do differently next time? What do I want to do differently? How is that going to serve me? And then over time, you doing that, it just becomes what I call an unconscious alarm system. This started 11 years ago when I first said my brain tumor, and someone called me out and they're like, why did you say it's yours? Do you want it to be yours? And I was like, no. They're like, you have to understand the power of language, because at the unconscious level, you're telling your body that that's a part of you. And if you want it to be, you want to rid yourself of that and not have power over you, then you need to stop saying mine and say the. And that was the first piece of awareness to this talk and this conversation about mental and emotional work and the unconscious mind. So today, it's just become like any other habit, which is formed over time of conscious repetition. And I think Kerwin talks about this, and James talks about this in the book. It takes about roughly 66 days to form a new habit of conscious repetition daily. Right. So at first, it may start out formal. It must start out formal because you have to embed that learning. And then over time, it just becomes a new way of living, to where you recognize something that is anything less than ideal. And you instantly say, was that what I wanted? If it's no, what do I want? How can I make that happen next time? And what do I have to do differently?
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. I did a similar thing that's really helped me, and it's taken from a couple of different people. And so it's the book, The Map, which I really like, and it's having you start really broad, and I have my clients do this now, and it's like a broad intention. It's like what, and broad intention would be, you don't have to know what you want, just how do you want to feel, right? Because we know that emotions are the language of the body, and that's going to instruct your subconscious mind and take you to that place. And so we talk about, how do you want to feel? Do you want to feel gratitude, love, joy? You want to feel at peace? You want to feel abundant? And then going into more detailed things like more specific. Like I want my work life to be like this. I want my health to be like this. I want my relationships to be like this. And then you go down to like very specific of, hey, I've got this thing coming up this week and I want it to go like this. So you're setting intentions. And so then and it was very formal when I started. And so I wrote all those down, man. It took me 2 or 3 weeks to get it to where I really like it. And I'm constantly editing that. And I'd wake up every morning and I would read that. It would take me like 2 or 3 minutes. I'd do it like kind of in my morning routine. And that would get embedded in my mind, in my subconscious mind. It was amazing to watch these things unfold. And then at nighttime, use like a Dr. Joe approach, which is laying down and going like, where did I fall from grace today? What did I do well? Celebrate those wins. I did a post about this yesterday in my little private group. Just like a quick review. Now I do this all in my head. And now I've even gotten to where, this is different too. So I grew up in a Christian home, very religious, and that put a pretty bad taste in my mouth, just the way that it went down. And I wasn't a fan. And, I didn't have a relationship with a higher power, God, source, whatever, whatever you want to call that. And now I feel like I have a really good relationship with that. And that's where the surrender comes in. And so I just go, I know that I can't change these things. I can't create these things. I can design them, is like what Dr. Joe would say. I can design these things and I can hand them over to a higher power. So it's all about, to me, that means setting an intention. So if I set an intention, and just like you said, I set the target, I don't know how I'm going to get there. And I got to surrender and open to however I'm going to get there. Because if I focus on my limited knowledge of what I know, and it's got to happen my way, well, then I shut myself off to everything else. We've all seen the diagram where it's like, what I think I know, what I actually know, what I don't know that I don't know, or whatever it is. There's, in the universe, we look at unlimited possibilities, and you probably know like 0.00001, and now you're saying you've got to fit into that box. Well, you have to surrender that over. I love admitting, who have I been? This is who I'm being. This is who I'm not happy with. I surrender this over to you. Turn this into something that's wisdom for me, that's right for me. And ultimately, this is what I want. And how I get there, I don't know, but this is how I want to feel. And then you can feel it. If I can feel it, then I can create it. Or then if I can feel it, then I can emotionalize it, and then I can internalize it, and I can go towards that. And so it's just, I love the process of setting an intention, reviewing that towards the end of the day, and constantly working on yourself. And once you've done it for a while, I have a note on my phone, but I haven't looked at the note on my phone in months. I do it all in my head now. And it's just like a 5-minute thing when I wake up, or whenever I feel like I just got out of a hyperbaric oxygen tank and I laid in there for an hour, and I did this, like, it felt like 15 minutes, but I was just kind of talking to God, to a higher power, and saying like, this is what I'm aware of. I had this big breakthrough of understanding that I've been doing everything and I've been in the way, and I'm trying to get out of the way, and I surrender that. Like, help me see that during the day. Help me catch myself, and help me be in alignment with what my soul wants. And then tonight, I'm going to think about that again and go, okay, this is where I didn't do that. This is where I was in alignment with that. Let's celebrate that. Let's create more of that. And then tomorrow's a new day.
Yeah. And I think that's what I was going, or that's where I was going with, like, at first formally doing it. And then as you do it so much, you get to the point where you can just see it in your mind, and then you design your day with that intention. And then over time, you're living that vision and all those things you're working towards, especially when you let go of the how and the when. All the unfathomable possibilities of that happen. And that's, what I'm experiencing today. That's what you're experiencing today. And that's what we're focusing more on, is just letting go and letting life happen. Because if we can trust life is working for us, that, we don't know if that's right or wrong, but it's serving us really well to believe that. And, that's a beautiful thing, because when you start to do that more and more, you start to reflect on the past, and then you can see how all that happened for you. And all the times that you were trying to control a situation with the same level of thinking that got you into the situation you want to get out of, and then you try to control it, it didn't work out, and it created more problems. And every time that you let go and you just surrendered, and most people do this at their worst, at their lowest, which is where we started. We get to your lowest and you're just like, fuck it, like, just whatever. And then you're like, oh, okay. And then if you become aware of that, which is part of what we do, it's sharing that message, then you can use that more and more. You can sort of see it show up. And it's, it's really interesting because, you mentioned something else about surrendering and letting go of control. You see this, like I'm playing the guitar again. It's been 17, 18 years since I played guitar. And you see this with musicians. And like at first you're, talk about formal. You're like, I'm reading, music, and I'm like making sure I match up my fingers and strumming and like doing that to the beat and all that. And over time, you do that repetitively so much, then you don't need to look at music anymore. And I'm starting to see that happen. I've been playing for about 3 weeks now. I'm able to do 3 or 4 different songs, the first parts, without looking at music now. And that's my practice now. And then I have to look at the sheet of music to go on. And then I do that over and over and over again. And then I got it. But then that actually leads into our next point of why most people quit before they reach greatness. They don't want to do the work for whatever reason. And we know a lot of trauma gets stuck in the body. And that's where a lot of Dr. Nicole LaPera, Dr. Joe Dispenza's work comes in. And these traumas that we make, like most people think trauma has to be some kind of pivotal life moment or something massive that happened. And it's usually not the case. Yeah, those can be traumatic and those do have effects. But most of the time, it's just a basic human need, like being or feeling heard, feeling loved, or physical touch that wasn't met from a parent figure or a caretaker when we were younger, usually between the age 0-7, when we're in that hypnotic, unconscious brainwave state. And it's just those simple things that compound with like the more traumatic in terms of physical experiences most people think of. And that gets stuck in the body. And then we get addicted to those chemicals that continue. And then I've actually talked about this on the podcast, my addiction to stress in the past. Anytime things were, my tasks were done and everything was positive and just chill, I freaked out because I wasn't used to it. I was used to chaos. Like chaos made me feel at peace because it gave my body what it was striving for with those chemicals. It wasn't desirable. It was creating a lot of sickness and illness and stress, but it was what my body was looking for, until I learned that that's not serving me. That's just a past version of myself. And I can break that habit, which one of the first things was throwing my Oura ring away. And, then I got over that, and now I'm good. I get a Whoop strap, and it's like, I can look at things very differently now. But it was understanding that I was living in the past in a physical sense that was triggered by an emotional and mental sense that was, this feedback loop that I was living in unaware of. And so now I'm aware of it and I can change it. I'm experiencing that. So why don't you talk a little bit about that and your perspective of, what you've seen in your life and what you've seen with working with other people, why most people quit before they reach that break point of reaching what they want or reaching this point of greatness in their life.
Well, I mean, I think it's uncomfortable, right? And at first, I love what you said about being addicted to the emotions, and I'll get back to that. But it's uncomfortable, right? To change. I mean, it's doing things differently than what you're used to. It's getting out of that daily routine, and ultimately, like you said, we become addicted to those emotions. That's what is known, and the ego, the analytical mind goes nuts whenever we want to do something different because it wants to keep you safe, and what is safe is what is known. And as soon as we start telling our body that we're doing something else, and that ego is going to start kicking and screaming and doing everything it can and coming up with every possible excuse that sounds like a great idea in the moment. Start tomorrow, have the piece of cheesecake, don't do the work. And then also there's a delicate balance between surrender and doing the work. But ultimately, it's comfortable to go back to what we know. And I think that's so easy. As soon as we start, as soon as we're in the unknown, right? That's a scary place to be until we surrender to it. Keep coming back to that.
Yeah. A great book detailing that is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. In great detail about neuropeptides and hormones and all those things of how that creates this response with our cells. And then when the cells aren't getting those chemicals, then it creates unconscious, what we label as self-sabotage moments to create those chemicals that we're addicted to that we're not aware of. And the number one effort of the brain is to preserve energy. And so doing something new creates uncomfortable emotions, and that takes away energy. So that's why we're like, oh, I'll hit the snooze alarm, or I'll just start tomorrow, or I can't change. We give into those limiting beliefs because that's our brain's way of protecting us from the unknown, which is scary. Even though it has everything that we want, it's not familiar. And that unfamiliarity creates conflict with the mind and the body. And when we become incoherent with the mind and body, that's when we get fucked up and we do things that are, we label as, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have done this, or why do I keep doing that? Why do I keep going back out with this type of person? Or why do I get all these things? And it's like, it's because your brain is trying to protect you It's important though to understand that the ego, the brain protecting you, that was a learning that was built upon when we were younger, and it served us then, but it doesn't serve us anymore. Like Jackie and I use as a great example. She comes from a big Italian family, very loud and happy and positive for the most part when they're loud. They do get angry, and that's every human does. I grew up in a very traumatic, dangerous environment with my brother's dad, who so I associated yelling with fear and needing to protect myself. And so it got to the point where Jackie would raise her voice and I'd be like, why the fuck are you yelling at me? Like, what are you doing? And we had to work through that. And I had to understand, I had to reassociate loud noises from a person doesn't always mean violence or negativity or unsafe territory. It's a form of excitement. Two different things, the same thing, different outcomes, different perspectives. I had to retrain my mind to understand that. And so that's just my personal take on it. So a great resource is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I would honestly tell people, now that I've read it in detail and I've gone through her master classes on her YouTube channel, how to do the work. It essentially breaks down in a very, I think, a more simplistic manner than Dr. Joe's work, which gets into the nitty gritty of quantum physics, which even for me at the time, I was like, how the fuck do I wrap my mind around this? She breaks down how the ego works and tries to protect us and where we get that from, our parents, and where they got that from, and all these things in a brilliant way. Her book, How to Do the Work. And if you don't want to take the time to read the book, her masterclass on her YouTube channel, the Self-Healer Soundboard, she does one per chapter of the book. And it's a great summary. She does it with her partner, Jenna. They read a little excerpt and then they discuss, they have a discussion about it. They take in calls from other people in the community of questions, and they go through their answer perspective on it. And it's just a really empowering, at the end of the day, to be aware is to be empowered. If you want to make a change in your life, you have to start with accepting that your reality is your reality. And it's not you're at blame or at fault for it or anyone else's. It's just you have to take accountability for where you are. And then once you do that, you also understand that you are able to change that. And it's a beautiful thing when you live in that. And then you add in the pieces of surrendering to the unknown and letting things unfold how they're going to. And we have no control over life. And the more we try to control things, it's more like we're like choking the air out of that possibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing I wanted to point out too, as you said that, which was beautiful. When you, and I've realized this in myself recently, going back into Dr. Joe and doing some of his meditations again, is when everything's, you're going to be excited about change at the beginning. Like you discover these new things about yourself and like, oh man, I really want to change this. And you hear about the science and the quantum physics and how it's possible. You read the stories, and I would encourage anybody that is going through something to look at people that have been through similar things that you have and get excited about them having success, because if they can do it and you can see it, then you can do it. If I can, what does Jay say? If I can dance the tango and you can watch me, then you can dance and do it. You can do it better. But like, once that like honeymoon phase wears off and you're not excited about it anymore, and you start to feel resistance, like, damn, I really don't want to do that this morning. Well, that's when the ego is coming back out and giving that last ditch effort. And the thing is, you've got to learn there that maybe you've already had success with this. And I certainly have seen this recently where I've made a lot of progress, right? And I don't want to do this anymore. I don't need to do this anymore. You're not through yet. You're not there yet. This is when you cross the river. This is when you actually change and rewire the brain. This is the ego's last ditch effort to grasp and hold on to some kind of real estate in your brain to say like, this is me, this is you. You need to go back to that. And so in that moment, when you're right on the edge of that, if you didn't know that and you surrender to going back to the old self, well, you're right back where you've always been. That's the time when you got to kind of understand, like, okay, this is my body kicking and screaming and telling me like, I don't want to go forward. You're almost there. This is when you sit it down like it's a dog and you tell it to sit and stay, and you're not going to get up until you're in love with yourself, until you're in love with that future reality. And and that's why I love the Dr. Joe meditations, because I know that, dude, I haven't even really talked about this on the podcast, but I've been going through the long haul COVID stuff. I realize that's what it was now. And there's mornings where I had just woke up and I had so much fatigue and anxiety and these different things coming out of me that I hated and I resented. And so I would lay down and I'd do that meditation, and my body was giving me every reason to like roll back over and go to sleep, to do it tomorrow, to stop. This is like painful. And it was painful. And I would lay there for an hour, sometimes more. And eventually that little I call it the inner bitch too. That little inner bitch shuts up, and then you realize like you won the day, right? And so now you're able to create. You got this new. You liberate that energy of that negative self trying to come out. You overcome yourself. You create a new reality with that new energy that you've created. And so if it's yours, you're creating a reality, and you're putting that into the field. The field has to respond. The universe, the energy, whatever you want to call it. Because you create it with your energy. And so now you've overcome yourself, you've released a lot of that energy, you created something new, and you actually fell in love with that person. And a lot of it is just loving yourself. And that's what I'm learning a lot about right now. But when you can do that first thing in the day, and you can be aware when that last ditch effort is trying to stick its ugly head out and take that control back, and you push forward, and you keep your vision on that target, that goal that you've got for yourself, man, that's beautiful. And the rest of the day is easy when you overcome yourself first thing in the day. That's why I like doing that in the morning. And then, kind of applying some of the things we talked about later in the day. But yeah, it's and it's ongoing, and there's layers, once you get past that, once you peel back one layer of the onion, guess what? There's a whole onion left. And like, this is an ongoing work, and it never stops. And, it's going to ebb and flow. I certainly find times when I want to work on things, and other times where I just want to kind of take a break and be, and that's a part of what I'm learning right now. And, I've kind of made a deal with myself at this point that if I wake up and I feel like I want to do something different, I'm going to come back to it later in the day. I'm going to set that intention, and maybe I'm going to have just a 5-minute, kind of conversation in my head, but I'm going to do what I want. But I'm going to always be doing the work. So that's something I was thinking about earlier too. It's a delicate balance between doing the work and surrendering.
Yeah, no doubt. And to be clear, we're not talking about getting rid of the ego, which is impossible, because that's what allows us to identify in the external world. We're talking about understanding the ego and how and knowing how it's designed to protect us, and how we can optimize it to work for us, and that it's never going to go away. Again, it's what allows us to interact in society and identify as ourselves, and to say, this is me, this is my thought, this is my, all those types of things. And two things that I was inspired by something you said earlier was, number one, when we see these old parts of ourselves reemerging, especially at the beginning of change, when you said the honeymoon phase ends and you get into the work and you're like, oh shit, this is coming up again. That's something to celebrate, because that means you've changed on every which level possible, neurologically, physically, spiritually, energetically, biologically. Like, all those things have changed to the degree that you can now point out, oh, that's the old version of me coming back out and trying to take charge, because it's looking for that familiarity. I'm in something new. It's uncomfortable, even though I know it's desirable where I want to go, but it's something to celebrate, because the only way for you to be aware of it is to be changing. And that's something to celebrate, and to not judge the fact that this old part of you is coming out. Reframe it, celebrate it, because you are now someone new on every level possible, to the point where you can be aware of it. And number two, at that point, that's where the consistency over perfection really, really hits home, and focusing on being consistent, not perfect. If one day you take 2 hours to get out of bed, for example, at least you get out of bed, because the next day, maybe you'll get out in an hour or in 5 minutes, whatever it is. The goal is not perfection, which is an illusion. And people that talk about, being perfect, or throwing the perfect football, or this or that, Jimmy and I talked about that on the podcast. I haven't put his episode out, but he talked about that as using that as inspiration. He knows he'll never get there. He knows there's no way to ever throw a perfect football, or in his career, that's what helped him. But the illusion of it is what drove him forward. But I find that if you don't have that right mindset, that it's helping you, it's hurting you, then looking at it is like you're getting better every day. With every step forward, you're staying consistent. You're not looking at perfection anymore. That's going to create the positive emotion and the momentum that you want, and that's going to keep propelling you forward. So at that point of change and the old self reemerging, it's a valuable lesson and perspective to hold, is consistency over perfection. And that's something that I talk about quite a bit with my clients. I remind myself at times, because we're only human. Our ego comes out and it's like, you're not doing enough, and this and that. And it's like, today is 5 weeks out from brain surgery for me. And, I've been feeling great, and I've been doing this, and I worked out for the first time Monday, and my thighs and hamstrings were shot, and I was only lifting 150 pounds. And so I had to remind myself, all right, this is the reality you're in. You're 5 weeks out. Like, just keep staying consistent. So I've been using the ROMWAD app. I've been doing a lot of yoga and holding these stretches and like doing stuff like that. So I get my body moving. I've been golfing a lot, which I'm excited because I know you and I and Clint are going to get out there on the golf course when I come up in November.
Might
But I
not be
think
excited when you get here though.
do what?
Might not be so excited when you get here and I whoop that ass though.
Oh, we'll see. I've been practicing, but I think this is a great place to stop, especially with our time frame. But the moral of the story is celebrate the moments you see that old self emerging, because that means you've been doing the work to get to that point of change where you can recognize that. And the more you can focus on letting go and not controlling an outcome, the more you create a possibility or you create an environment for possibilities you couldn't even imagine to appear. And that reminds me of the quote, the same level of thinking that created the problem isn't going to create the solution. You have to surrender to a higher power. And that's life. That's energy. That's God. That's universe, whatever you want to call it. It's something beyond you that you can't possibly write that script, which is what I believe is what worked for you and I meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that a lot recently too, as I continue going on this journey and having these amazing breakthroughs, just like you are. Sleep's better, energy's better, like coming out of this long haul COVID shit, and just starting to feel more like myself every couple of days, man. And I'm working with tell you about Dr. D, and she's like, she goes, every couple of days, she's like, you do awesome. And then every couple of days, like something new, like burst out emotionally of you. And I can feel it. And now I used to, that was sidelining me big time. It was like scaring the crap out of me. And I'd get a lot of fear of, oh my God, I'm going backwards. No, you're not going backwards. You're now aware of the old self. And now we can do things differently about it. So when you know that and you can be excited about it, I think a lot of that fear and that stress and that anxiety that comes with, oh man, am I going back where I was before? Like, no, I'm aware of it. And I'm not going to emotionally be attached to that. I'm going to I'm going to stay consistent without being obsessed about perfection. That's one thing that I'm glad you said that earlier, because being perfect is unattainable. Yeah. I think it's great to set the gaze or on perfection and work towards that, knowing that you love yourself no matter where you are, and not comparing yourself to others, because that's what we are, all one, but we are all also a unique individual, and your soul is going to be more attuned and in line with expressing itself individually versus trying to be someone else. So you can try to be the best version of yourself as long as you're okay with who you are today, and being aware of those old patterns, like you said, lets you know that you're on your way, that you are not that person anymore. So those are things to be celebrated. And I know that gives me a lot of peace. And I think anybody going through this journey, understanding that, I mean, I remember the first time you shared this with me, the emotional roller coaster. I was having some issues with sleep, and we were kind of chatting back and forth about that. And you're like, dude, this is where you are. You had a breakthrough. You had an amazing breakthrough here, and now patterns are returning. And that doesn't mean that you're going backwards. It means that now you're aware. So what did you do to get to this breakthrough? Do that shit again. And it's the thinking and the doing over and over again, like we always say, until you're there. And you'll know it when you are. And maybe you won't ever be there, but that's okay. You got to love yourself no matter what.
I love that. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing. Once again, I'm stoked of all the success that you and I are both experiencing. I'm excited to see you again soon. And for the listeners or the viewers, wherever you're catching this episode, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what changes you're working on, what's helped you break through, what patterns you're recognizing that are coming back. And Mitch and I both have our free Facebook groups you want to join. So if you type in Tribe Change Makers, that's my private Facebook group. And Mitch, you want to give yours a shout out?
Yeah, I almost forgot it. It's Health Transformers.
So if you go into Facebook and type in Health Transformers or Tribe Change Makers, and then hit the group section, it'll pop right up and just send a request to join, and we'd love to have you in there. Again, it's free. There's nothing to sell but empowerment. So, can't beat that. But again, Mitch, I appreciate you. I love you. And thanks for coming on. And thanks for all of you guys tuning in.
Love you too, bro.